I wasn't supposed to be there. That's what my daughter had said the last time we spoke, right there in the hospital hallway, loud enough for the nurse and two strangers to hear. "You're not family anymore. Please stop embarrassing me." People stared. I felt my face burn, like I'd been slapped in public. Now, 3 months later, I stood at the back of a small community hall, the smell of disinfectant and baby powder hanging in the air. It was a welcome ceremony for newborns. Soft music, pastel balloons, folding chairs arranged in neat rows. My daughter, Melissa, sat in the front with her husband, smiling for photos like I had never existed. She finally noticed me. Her smile vanished. She leaned toward her friend and whispered something, then turned fully around and looked straight at me with a cold laugh. "You really have no shame, do you?" she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "I cut you out of my life and you still show up like a beggar?" The room went quiet. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. My hands were shaking. I stared at the floor, wishing I could disappear. Then Melissa added, sharp and cruel, "You're just a lonely old woman with nothing left. Don't pretend you matter here." Silence crashed down harder than her words. That's when it happened. A woman I didn't recognize, mid-30s, nurse badge clipped to her jacket, stood up from the second row. She walked straight past Melissa and stopped in front of me. Without asking, she gently took my arm and said, clearly and calmly, "Ma'am, please come sit here. You deserve to be honored." A murmur rippled through the room. Melissa froze. Her husband looked confused. People started whispering, turning their heads back and forth between us. Before Melissa could say a word, the nurse added, louder now, "This woman saved my son's life, twice." Gasps. Melissa's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, her voice suddenly unsteady. Then my granddaughter, my daughter's baby, made a soft sound in her arms. The room quieted again as Melissa instinctively looked down, and in that fragile, clear moment, the baby reached out toward me and laughed. A real laugh, bright, familiar. The nurse looked at Melissa and said, "You really don't know who your mother is, do you?" Melissa stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. That was the moment she came running back to me, but she still didn't know the truth. Because this all started 6 years earlier, on a rainy Tuesday night, when my daughter slammed the door and told me never to come back. Subscribe for the next part of this true emotional story. You won't believe what my daughter discovers next. 6 years earlier. It was a rainy Tuesday night, the kind where the sky feels heavy and everything sounds louder than it should. I remember the clock on the wall clearly, 9:47 p.m. The second hand kept ticking, slow and cruel, as my daughter stood near the door with her coat on and her jaw tight. "I'm done, Mom," Melissa said. "I can't keep fixing your mistakes." I didn't even know what mistake she meant. The apartment smelled like wet clothes and burnt tea. My hands were wrapped around a chipped mug, shaking so badly the tea sloshed over the edge. I had just told her I couldn't give her the money she asked for. It wasn't because I didn't want to. It was because I didn't have it. She laughed bitterly. "You always have an excuse." Then she said the words that cut deepest. "If I have to choose between my future and you, I choose my future." She opened the door, rain rushing in like it wanted to erase me. Before leaving, she turned back once and said, "Don't call me, don't follow me. When I have a family, you won't be part of it." The door slammed. That night, I cried until morning, but I didn't chase her, because there was something she didn't know, something I had done quietly without telling anyone. 2 weeks before that fight, I had signed papers at the hospital. I had given consent for a risky procedure, one that saved a young boy's life. The nurse who would later stand up for me, that was his mother. What Melissa never knew was that the money she asked for, I had already used it to help someone else live. I thought I'd lost my daughter forever that night. Years passed, no calls, no messages. I watched her life from a distance, photos online, then none at all when she blocked me. When I heard she was pregnant, it wasn't from her. It was from a neighbor. I never planned to go to that baby ceremony. I only went because I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a simple card. She deserves to know who you are. I didn't know who sent it. Now, back in the hall, everyone was watching me. Melissa stood frozen, her baby still reaching toward me like she recognized something her mother couldn't see. Melissa whispered, almost afraid, "Mom, what did you do?" I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in years, and I said, "I protected you, even when you hated me for it." Her eyes filled with tears, but the hardest truth, the one that would change her forever, still hadn't been said. The room felt smaller after my words. Melissa held her baby closer, her arms tightening like she was afraid someone might take her away. Her voice came out low and shaky. "Protected me from what?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. The nurse stepped forward again. Her name badge caught the light as she reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder. It was old, edges worn, the kind of file that had been handled too many times. "These are hospital records," she said. "I kept copies because I was told never to forget the woman who saved my son." Melissa frowned. "Why are you showing me this?" The nurse turned the folder so everyone could see my name printed at the top. Gasps filled the room again. Inside were consent forms, dates, signatures. One line stood out in bold: donor approval, emergency match. Melissa's hands started to shake. Donor of what? I swallowed hard. My throat burned. "Of a kidney," I said quietly. The words hit her like a physical blow. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible. You were sick back then. You said you were tired all the time." "I was tired," I said, "because I was going to dialysis 3 times a week. I just never told you why." The nurse added softly, "Her donation saved my son's life. Without it, he wouldn't have lived past that year." Melissa stared at the papers, then at me, then back at her baby. Tears rolled down her face, dropping onto the blanket. "And the money?" she asked. "The money I asked you for that night?" "I used it to pay for recovery," I said, "and the rest I saved for you, in case you ever needed it." The room was completely silent now. No whispers, no movement. Melissa's knees gave out. She sank back into her chair, covering her mouth as a sound escaped her, half sob, half regret. "I told everyone you abandoned me," she said through tears. "I said you chose strangers over your own daughter." I walked toward her for the first time in 6 years. Every step felt heavy, but necessary. "I chose life," I said. "That's what I taught you to do, even when it costs you." She looked up at me then, truly looked at me like she was seeing my face for the first time. Her baby reached out again and grabbed my finger, holding it tight. Melissa broke. "I was wrong," she cried. "I was so wrong." She stood and wrapped one arm around me, the other around her child, shaking as she held on like she was afraid I'd disappear. But forgiveness doesn't erase time, and the biggest question still hung in the air. Could a bond broken for 6 years really be healed? Melissa didn't let go of me right away. Her shoulders shook as she cried into my jacket, her baby pressed between us, warm and alive. People quietly began to sit back down, pretending not to watch, but the room still felt charged, like everyone knew something irreversible had just happened. After a few minutes, Melissa pulled back and wiped her face. Her eyes were red, but there was something else there now: fear. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. We stepped into a small side room near the hallway. It smelled like hand soap and fresh paper towels, a single chair, a table, and a flickering light overhead. She sat down slowly, like her legs no longer trusted her. "I don't deserve to ask you anything," she said, "but I need to." I waited. She took a deep breath. "My marriage, it's not what it looks like online. We're drowning in debt. Medical bills, the baby, everything. I pushed you away because I was ashamed." Her words stung, but they also explained so much. Then she said the sentence I wasn't ready for. "Mom, will you come live with us?" The room went silent again. For years, I had imagined this moment, her apologizing, her coming back, but I never imagined the weight of the choice she was placing in my hands now. "I don't mean as a burden," she rushed. "I want my child to know you. I want to fix what I broke." I looked at my granddaughter sleeping peacefully in her arms, unaware of the storm around her. "I need time," I said honestly. "Love doesn't heal on command." Melissa nodded, tears returning. "I understand. I'll wait, as long as it takes." As we walked back into the hall, something had shifted. People smiled at me now. Some nodded with quiet respect. The nurse gave me a small, grateful look. Melissa stayed close to me, not touching, but not walking away either. That night, I went home alone, but for the first time in 6 years, my phone buzzed before I went to sleep. A message from Melissa. "Good night, Mom." I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back, because saying yes might mean reopening old wounds, and saying no might mean losing her all over again. I didn't reply to Melissa's message that night, not because I didn't want to, but because I was afraid that one wrong word would pull me back into a life I barely survived. I lay awake listening to the ceiling fan, my body aching in the familiar way it always did when I was tired. Living with one kidney teaches you to listen to pain differently. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. "I made breakfast. I know you're not here. I just wanted to tell you." Something in that message felt different. Not guilt, not panic, effort. We met 3 days later at a small cafe near the hospital, the same hospital where everything had changed years ago. The smell of coffee and toast filled the air. Melissa arrived early, holding the baby like she was afraid someone might judge her for how she once judged me. "I'll do anything," she said as soon as I sat down. "Therapy, boundaries, whatever you need." I looked at her carefully. "Then you need to hear my condition." She nodded quickly. "I won't move in to fix your life," I said. "I won't raise your child for you, and I won't be your secret sacrifice again." Her eyes filled, but she didn't interrupt. "If I come back," I continued, "it's as your mother, not your solution, and never your silence." Melissa exhaled slowly. "I can do that." I reached across the table and touched my granddaughter's tiny hand. She wrapped her fingers around mine, strong and trusting. "One more thing," I said. "You tell the truth. To your husband, to your friends, to yourself. No more rewriting the past." Melissa swallowed hard. Then she nodded. "I already told him. Everything." That surprised me. A week later, I met her husband properly for the first time. He looked uncomfortable, ashamed, but he thanked me for my honesty, not my kidney. Things didn't magically fix themselves. Some days were awkward, some days were quiet, but they were real. Then one evening, Melissa handed me a small envelope. Inside was a copy of the original hospital consent form. On the back, she had written, "I will never forget who you are." I smiled, but something inside me stayed guarded, because forgiveness opens doors, but trust walks in slowly. We had been doing well, not perfectly, but honestly. Melissa called me every morning now, sometimes just to say, "The baby slept," or "I burned the toast again." Small things, normal things, The kind of things I once begged for and then learned to live without. Then the doorbell rang. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was at Melissa's house for the first time, sitting on the couch while my granddaughter slept against my chest. The house smelled like laundry detergent and warm milk. Peaceful. Melissa opened the door, and her entire body stiffened. Standing there was her father, my ex-husband. He smiled like he owned the place. "Heard the family's back together," he said, stepping inside without being invited. His eyes landed on me, and the smile twisted. Still playing the victim, I see. The room went cold. He laughed softly. "You know, Melissa used to cry about you, said you abandoned her. Guess some stories are easier to tell than the truth." I felt my chest tighten. Years ago, this was the man who taught Melissa how to dismiss me, how to mock my weakness, how to leave without looking back. Melissa glanced between us, panic flashing across her face. Then he said it. "Well, since you're living off my daughter again," he sneered, "I hope you're at least useful this time." Silence. I slowly shifted my granddaughter into the crib and stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but my voice didn't. "I'm leaving," I said quietly. I reached for my bag. That's when Melissa stepped in front of me. "No," she said. Her voice shook, but she didn't move. "You're not." She turned to her father, eyes blazing. "You don't get to speak to her like that, ever." He scoffed. "Since when do you care?" "Since I learned the truth," she said. "Since I learned who stayed, who sacrificed, who loved me when you didn't." His smile vanished. "This is my house," he snapped. Melissa shook her head. "It's not. It's ours. And if you can't respect my mother, you need to leave." The room held its breath. He looked at her, stunned, truly stunned. Then he laughed, short and bitter, and walked out, slamming the door behind him. Melissa turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "I should have defended you years ago." I took her hands. "You defended me now." And in that moment, I knew something had changed. Because love spoken in private is easy, but love defended in public, that's real. After that day, something inside Melissa settled. She didn't just call me more, she included me. Doctor appointments, baby checkups, family decisions. Not out of guilt, but out of respect. For the first time, I wasn't an afterthought. Then she did something I never expected. 2 weeks later, Melissa invited both families over for dinner. Her husband's parents, a few close friends, even neighbors. I almost said no. Old habits tell you to stay small when you've been hurt long enough. But I went. The table was crowded. Plates clinked. My granddaughter sat in a small carrier at the center, gurgling happily. Laughter floated around the room until Melissa stood up and tapped her glass. "I need to say something," she said. Every muscle in my body tightened. She looked at me first, then at everyone else. "For years, I told a story about my mother that wasn't true," she said. "I said she walked away from me. I said she chose strangers over family." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "The truth is, I walked away from her, and while I was building my life, she was saving one, literally." Murmurs spread across the table. "She gave up part of her own health so another child could live, and she did it without asking for thanks. I punished her for that." She turned fully toward me now, eyes shining. "This is my mother, and if you can't respect her, you don't have a place in my life." Silence followed. Then her husband stood up and put a hand on her shoulder. "I'm proud of you," he said. Someone else nodded, then another. I felt something in my chest loosen, something that had been tight for years. Later that night, as people left, Melissa hugged me tightly. "I don't want my child growing up thinking love disappears when it gets hard," she whispered. I kissed her hair, tears finally falling. "Then you're already a better parent than you think." As I walked home, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. We need to talk. What you did, people are asking questions. I stared at the screen, my heart sinking, because not everyone was happy that the truth was out. The message sat on my phone all night. I didn't reply. By morning, I knew who it was from. My ex-husband had always hated the truth, especially when it made him look small. People asking questions meant stories unraveling, control slipping. That afternoon, I met Melissa at the park. The baby slept in her stroller, the air cool and quiet. I showed her the message. She didn't hesitate. "You don't owe him anything," she said. "Not your time, not your peace." I smiled at that word, peace. For so long, I thought peace meant silence, enduring, staying invisible. I had been wrong. That evening, I typed a single reply. "I have nothing left to explain." Then I blocked the number. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No shouting, no confrontation. And that, I realized, was the victory. Healing doesn't always end with a showdown. Sometimes it ends with a boundary. Weeks passed. I didn't move in with Melissa, but I became part of her life. I picked my granddaughter up from daycare once a week. I taught her how to clap, how to laugh, how to reach for people without fear. One afternoon, Melissa watched us from the doorway and said quietly, "I used to think strength meant never needing anyone." I looked at my granddaughter, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger. "Strength," I said, "is knowing who deserves your love." Melissa nodded. "I'm glad I came running back." I was too. Because I didn't get my daughter back by proving I was right. I got her back by choosing love without disappearing myself. And this time, she stayed. If you felt every moment of this story, subscribe now to follow more real-life emotional journeys. Hit the bell so you don't miss part 1 of our next story. You won't believe the twists coming up. Comment below. Have you ever been hurt by someone you love and got a second chance? I'd love to hear your story.